In this video, you'll see how to receive an invoice, serials, subscriptions, and WorldShare acquisitions. So let's say I've received the first issues for 2 new serials subscriptions that I've ordered. I want to indicate that I've started receiving these subscriptions. I'll also add them to an invoice and pay the invoice. Adding the specific holdings for these issues is done on the copies and the issues screen and is covered in another video, Serials Issues Management, which you can also find on the Acquisitions training page. So let's see how this works in WMS Acquisitions. I've logged on to WMS and I'll select Acquisitions. Then on the left navigation panel, I'll click Receive an Invoice. I need to change the processing type to serial, which is the correct processing type for print serials as well as multi-part monographs. So I'll click the drop down and then I'll select serial. I'll leave the action set to receive an invoice rather than doing the receiving and invoicing separately. And then I'll click on new invoice. I have to enter an invoice number, and this can be any alphanumeric characters. So I'll enter SER 062321. Next, I'll type in the first few characters of the vendor's name, ROB, and I'll select the vendor, Robinson's Books, when it appears in the dropdown. I'll leave the invoice date set at today's date, but I could use the calendar widget if I wanted to change it, and then I'll click on Save. Now you can see that the vendor and invoice number are populated on the left. Next, I'll click View Items to find my first title. Then I'll search by title, and I'll type in the first few characters of the title in the search text box, and the system immediately starts filtering as I type. There are 2 titles with the characters I typed. The first is the serial I have to receive. In the Receipt Status column, I'll click Start, and the Finish button then appears. And the status changes to Partially Received. Next, I'll click Add to Invoice to add this title to the new invoice I created. On the Add Item to Invoice screen, I'll leave it set at the default Pay in Full, and I'll click Add. I could click Finish now, or I could come back later after I've received all of the subscription issues to click Finish. In the Items Processed area, it now says 2 items processed in this session. That's because I've taken 2 actions on this title. I'll click to open the Items Processed area. And you can see for this title, the receiving is started and the status is now partially received. And 100% of the cost for this item has been added to the invoice. Next, I want to search for my second title. So I'll click in the search box to clear the previous search. And I'll enter the first few words of the title, Journal of Nanoparticle. And again, as I type, the system filters and finds my title. So I'll click Start in the Receipt Status column, and the Receipt Status Start button changes to Finish. Next, I want to add this title to the same invoice, so I'll click Add to Invoice. And again, I'll leave it set to Pay in Full and click Add. And if I click the Items Processed area now, you can see the 2 actions for my second title. I've started receiving and I've added it to my invoice. I can now go directly to the invoice by clicking the invoice number in the Invoiced column. I can make any needed edits to the invoice. For example, I could change the invoice number or date. I could also optionally add an external invoice ID or a payment reference ID. I'll scroll down to review the items on the invoice. I can make any needed changes to the funds I'm using or the costs if there might be some difference from the ordering price or discounts or shipping. After I'm finished editing the invoice, I can click Mark as Ready if I want to come back later to pay it, or if maybe another staff person needs to review it first. Or I can just click Pay, which I'll do now. And the system responds, you're about to pay this invoice. Only date paid, external invoice ID, and payment reference ID will be editable after payment. And I have the option to add an external invoice ID or a payment reference ID if I haven't already. And next I'll click Pay. The system is then updating the invoice. And the payment notice that I added to one of my titles on the order pops up. Notify Dr. Smith when first issue arrives. I'll just click OK to acknowledge that. And now you can see the status for the invoice has changed to paid. At the same time, the amounts for the designated funds have moved from the encumbered amounts to the expended amounts for those funds. The next step for current subscriptions would be to add the copy information, including the location and call number, on the copies screen. To get started, after going to the copies screen, you would click Add Copy. And then to receive the issues, you would go to the Issues screen. This workflow is covered in another video called Serials Issues Management. If you have questions, you can find contact information for OCLC support in your region, as well as additional training and documentation at help.oclc.org.